have made it. Have we been taken?
MCV Sports presents from Battle Creek, Michigan, World Championship Ballooning. Behind me, you see Fiesta balloons. They come in many sizes and shapes from all over the United States to display their grand colors for the thousands of spectators gathered here. Hello, everyone. I'm Ted Gordon.
And I'm Dana Nicola.
We'll be your hosts for the next 30 minutes as you witness with us the incredible splendor of the 7th World Hot Air Balloon Championships, coming to you from Battle Creek, Michigan. Over 100 aeronauts are here from 25 different countries to participate in competition for the renowned Kinsinger Trophy, which will be awarded to the top balloonist. Hot air ballooning is over 2 centuries old, but still most of us know very little about the sport. Here to fill us in a little bit with his expert analysis is veteran balloonist and corporate pilot Jeff Van Alstyne.
Thanks, Ted and Dana. I'm delighted to be here at the 7th World Championship because for everyone involved in competitive ballooning, this is it. This is what all the pilots and their crews have been putting in the long, hard hours for. We can look for a good performance from the Americans. 2 of the American pilots to watch are the 1981 world champion Bruce Comstock and David Levin, a lawyer from Boulder, Colorado.
Balloon's a very basic machine. There isn't much to do. It's on and off with a burner, an event, and that's it. So it's your instruments can't do it for you, the balloon can't do it for you. You just gotta concentrate.
Another pilot to watch is defending world champion Australian Peter Vizard, who has his own thoughts on this world competition.
May the best person win, basically. I'd like to win, but I don't want to see it in terms of winning at someone else's expense.
So we're here at the target site for task number 1, a CNT. Jeff, what's involved here?
Ted, the balloonists have all launched at least 3 miles from the Kellogg Regional Airport and are tracking into a goal. There's Dan Beliski from Alberta, Canada.
There are a number of people down below. Is that a distraction?
Not for Dan or any competitor. They're looking at the center of that X.
American Rod Bartholomew's coming in, and he's just a little bit off-center. He'll probably have to test the old throwing arm here.
This is where practice throwing that marker really counts. There it goes. And it's a nice throw, about 4 feet from the center of the X.
Jeff, look how low Denmark's Henning Sorensen is.
Right over the center of the X, a nice drop.
He was also using a co-pilot.
Yeah, many of the Europeans use a navigator.
With the drop, Sorensen wins the first task, gaining 1,000 points. His drop landed within a half meter from the center of the target, but there's still a long week of competition ahead.
It was beautiful to be the first one, but it would have been better if it had been later on in the competition. I don't like it as the first launch at our first flight, but it was good to do it anyhow.
The remainder of the balloons are now approaching the target at the Kellogg's Airport. Here's the number 90 Red Lobster balloon. Pilot Bill Cunningham earned second place with this throw, just off-center.
Well, you always like to start out pretty well. I've always been a notorious slow starter, you know. I start out way down the pack, you know, and you have to work back up. But second is good, you know. You always want to do as well as you can. Anytime you can get a point, you know, you want to get it any way you can. You don't want to slough off and then make a rush at the last. But no, I like second's fine.
So Henning Sorensen and Bill Cunningham are the leaders after task 1. Let's join Dana.
Some of the most important people at this World Championship are not the pilots, but their chase and recovery crews. These crews transport the nylon balloon and basket to the launch site, then keep track of the balloon in the air. Some teams use a radio to keep in contact with their pilot and follow closely so as to be at the landing location when the balloon sets down. For task 2, we will follow the chase crew of current world champion, Australian Peter Vizard. Peter and Judy Lynn, the Australian national champ, will be launching from the same area, so we'll get a chance to look in on both. Judy is one of only 3 female pilots competing in the championship, and before today's task, we got a chance to talk to Judy about her start in ballooning.
Well, I started ballooning in Australia 7 years ago. I was a television reporter. I was sent on an assignment, took my first flight, and I guess you might say I became a balloon groupie then. I sort of always wanted to be where the balloons were, and eventually got my own balloon, became a pilot, resigned from television, started a balloon company, and here I am.
We're partners in business, and we're partners in doing the best we can to compete. We're sharing our weather man. We have a professor of meteorology working with us, and we're not competing against each other as such. We fly our own. Once the balloon's in the air, you fly your own flight, and it's not the same as driving a racing car around a track where you're cutting someone off at the corner. We're not in the business of trying to cut each other off. We've got to race our own or run our own course down the track, and so you're only really competing with yourself once you get the balloon in the air.
Vizard's crew has started their inflator fan, and the lovely lady is about to take to the air.
Judy's crew has her balloon laid out and are also ready to start inflating. They only have 1 hour to pick a launch site and get off the ground. The brown truck is Vizard's recovery vehicle. In order for them to keep up with the balloon, they're going to have to travel 3 times as fast as the balloon's going, and it's moving along tonight at 16 knots.
These higher winds are making it tough to get close to the target. Peter did poorly in task 1 and must make up points here if he's going to defend his title. As you can see, Peter's high above the target, but directly over it, and his drop lands only 8 meters from the target, good for 3rd place today for Peter. Next is Henning Sorensen, the first round leader. If you'll recall, Henning was worried about being in front early, and here's why. The high winds have taken him far from the target, and his drop lands not only far away, but also in the woods. Some 100 meters away, 23rd today for Henning. This is American Al Nels from Dayton, Ohio. His toss, a pretty good one, 21 meters away, good for 8th place for Al Nels from Dayton. Further up in the sky is the green and white Moet Chandon balloon from France. Their pilot, Jean-Marie Houteau, his drop also in the woods, but not so bad, only 43 meters from the target, good for 12th place. And now another American balloon, the blue and green Future World balloon of Sid Cutter from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Here's a guy who's a real veteran in the ballooning world. Sid's been flying for 14 years now and had a great deal to do with organizing the first 2 world championships. He won the U.S. title in 1978 and took 2nd in the world championships in 1979. With each new world championship, the competition has continued to get stiffer, and Cutter knows it.
It is the best in the world. I mean, these folks are out for glory, and it's not like, you know, for money. It's just strictly glory, and they all would like to have that title.
Sid's drop landed only 6 meters from the target, good for 2nd place today. You know, his balloon is also unique in its design, and it deserves some mention. Whenever a tear develops in the Future World balloon, a different color patch is used, each color representing a new Cutter's Island to be added to the world map. As dusk approaches now in Battle Creek, you can see that a few of the balloons have yet to make their drops, but this looks like the closest balloon over the target. That's David Levin from Boulder, Colorado in the Red Dog balloon. Oh, that looks to be the best drop of the day, and that should earn him 1,000 points heading into the next round of competition. As Levin flies off now to his landing site, the officials are marking his distance on the ground. Most of the officials are volunteers from the Battle Creek area, and they've measured Levin's drop just over 3 meters from the center, easily the day's best effort. And so, with the first 2 World Championship tasks complete, let's look at the Kellogg scoreboard. American David Levin's on top, holding a slim 9-point lead over Michael Klingberg from Norway. Right behind is Austrian Josef Startbaum, and rounding out the top 5 are American Bill Cunningham and Henning Sorensen from Denmark. Let's join Dana Nicola.
If you're like most people, then the spectacle of a hot air balloon can only be topped by actually riding in one. So if you've ever wondered what it's like to ride in a balloon, here's your chance. Captain Fogg is the chief pilot of the Tony the Tiger balloon that's sponsored by Kellogg's. Captain Fogg, why don't you tell me what's involved in getting Tony into the skies?
The first thing that we'll do, Dana, is blow cold air into Tony so it assumes its natural shape. We'll heat that air so the air on the inside is lighter than the air on the outside, and then we can ascend into the skies.
About how much air does the Tony balloon hold?
Tony's big. It's called the Great Tony because it holds 105,000 cubic feet of hot air.
What's it made out of, and how heavy does it get? How heavy is it?
Well, the basket itself weighs about 300 pounds, and the envelope, the part that you see shaping Tony's head, is about 300 pounds. So we have roughly 600 pounds of equipment here that we fly off in. The basket is made out of wicker and aluminum framing, as well as the leather covering. It's very safe, very shock absorbing.
How many people does it hold?
We can put, depending on temperature and weight of the people, somewhere between 4 and 6 people in it.
How safe is it to fly in a balloon?
Done properly, it's very safe. Well, that about sums it up. You ready to go for a ride?
I sure am.
Well, let's go.
Liftoff was so smooth, and once airborne, I was amazed at the peacefulness and beauty we experienced, just floating along in our own little world. I asked Captain Fogg about Tony's special features.
They're kind of cute. He's got 13-foot tall ears. He's got 25-foot long nose, big 8-foot chin.
The captain can also control which way Tony's looking.
We installed a special rotator vent so that we could keep the balloon rotating with the face itself towards the crowd whenever possible.
I bet it goes over well with the kids, too.
Kids of all ages like Tony. It's one of the most recognized characters in the world.
We flew at treetop level for a while, then we ascended into the sky, able to see Tony's reflection on the trees far below. My first balloon ride was so much fun and so exciting, not only because of its breathtaking beauty, but also because I'm one of a lucky few to have the opportunity to fly in the great Tony the Tiger balloon.
Thanks, Dana. Jeff, how about turning from tigers to pandas? The People's Republic of China are here for the first time.
Ted, the Chinese never even owned a balloon until 3 years ago. Nobody expects them to win the championship, but we're really excited to have them here.
And you know, the interest in ballooning hasn't exactly been booming in China either. Just to show you, there are over 1 billion people in that country. But guess how many balloons? Only 8, and 2 of those were donated by Americans. So let's just say that we're fortunate to have 1/8 of China's ballooning population here with us this week. It's the bright yellow and red balloon called the Friendship, flown by pilot Hao Dongshan. Jeff, as you said, we can be proud that we've brought another part of the world together while leaving political differences at home. The World Hot Air Balloon Championship is held every 2 years, and with each championship comes a new location, new balloons, and new pilots. To qualify, an aeronaut must finish high in his country's national championship. So coming to Battle Creek is really an honor in itself, and many of the pilots are happy enough just to be here. For one, Alan Shore of Australia.
I'm just getting a feel for the whole event here. This is the first time I've ever been in America, first time I've been to a world championship. I've never flown in anything with more than 20 balloons in it, and now I'm flying with 100. And so it just takes a little while just to get the feel of it. But I'm really enjoying it, and I hope we're going to keep on doing well.
It is incredibly stiff competition. You have the best pilots in the world here, and it is obvious. It is obvious they are flying brilliantly, and it's a joy to be among them, and it is an education. At least I am going to leave here a far better pilot than I came, and I can't ask for any more than that.
Well, as you can see, the sun has just risen on this beautiful Battle Creek, Michigan morning. We're ready for balloon tasks 3 and 4, which will be combined into one flight.
Ted, there's Terrence Adams. He's flying the Johannesburg balloon for the South Africans. He's a British pilot. The task this morning is a 2-part task. A little more difficult than we've had so far.
Look at all those balloons. Unbelievable.
It is a beautiful sight, I have to admit. All the balloons will fly from this field this morning to a goal chosen by the officials, and then on to a second goal chosen by each pilot. There's Alan Muir. He's taking off with his map firmly in place.
Jeff, do many of the pilots use these maps?
Yeah, the map is essential. It's an important part of the competition to draw your lines on to get to your target. There's an old friend of mine, Bruce Comstock. Bruce and I once set a hot air balloon distance record. Bruce is a 5-time national champion, 1-time world champion. He's one of the most consistent performers we've ever had in hot air ballooning.
Anytime you talk about a hot air balloon championships, the first name you have to mention is Bruce Comstock. It doesn't make any difference if he starts on the very bottom of the list. You know, if he's dead last, everybody's looking over their shoulder to see, you know, where Bruce is. Bruce is the undisputed class of competitive ballooning. There's no doubt that he's the best.
addition to the competing balloons in the championship, there are also a number of special shaped balloons that will fly over Battle Creek. Here we see a Dapper Peanut, the legendary Uncle Sam, and our friend Tony the Tiger. Other shaped balloons include a giant hamburger with cheese, of course, and even the famous Chickaboom balloon. This Carmen Miranda lookalike wears a headdress which holds 2 50-foot bananas, several clusters of grapes, 2 very ripe apples complete with stems, 2 pears, and who knows how much orange juice, in a fruit bowl of such gigantic proportions that the famous lady can only fly in very stable weather conditions.
A quick look at the Kellogg scoreboard shows 3 Americans in the top 5. David Levin's still the leader. David Schaefer has now moved into 2nd place, followed by Oliver Roudellier from France, Bill Cunningham, and Jürgen Hoffmann from West Germany. So we've completed 4 tasks, and the American balloonists have performed very well. At this point, 6 of the top 20 balloonists are from the United States. One of those pilots is Al Nels, the current national champion. His balloon is called the Challenged, which illustrates the city skyline of Dayton, Ohio, where Nels was born. It was there in Dayton that Al got an early start in ballooning. When he was just 12, Al made his first hot air balloon, but not in your typical everyday fashion. He used dry cleaning bags, straws, and birthday candles. He's been a competitive pilot for 8 years now and has placed among the top 10 American balloonists each of the last 5 years. Let's go over now to Jeff, who has a very sobering look at the possible hazards of hot air ballooning.
Though it may appear dangerous, hot air ballooning is a very safe sport. That is until this year. In Task 5, American Alan Blount was 800 feet above the ground and began a gradual climb. Unaware that Italian pilot, Paolo Canagiacomo, was directly overhead. Canagiacomo's basket hit Blount's balloon, and the impact tore a hole in Alan's envelope, deflating it and sending him plunging towards the earth.
There was wind, a different speed of the wind. Where I was, it was slow, and down, it was much faster. Probably that's the reason why I haven't seen him coming up, because I was looking at the air and down. But he was coming from down position up, faster than moving faster also. So when I saw him, it was too late.
I was listening on the radio, and they said Alan was hit and it tore his top, and that's about the time I saw it. And I could see that he had too large a hole to stay airborne, and then the balloon starts to deflate in the sky up in excess of 1,000 feet. Well, it starts to accelerate as it goes down, you see, and then you just kind of hope that he's going to hit in the trees or hit in the lake or something, or it'll slow down the rate of descent. The last couple hundred feet, it was a complete streamer, which means it's accelerating pretty good, and had he been another 200 feet, I'm sure he would not have survived the crash.
There's an accepted risk when pilots fly in large groups, but keeping track of other competitors is as important as charting your own course. It's difficult to blame anyone in this type incident.
Technically, I think it's my fault because I was in the upper position, and I was supposed to be able to see the other balloon.
It's a little feeling of helplessness. You see the balloon deflate and he's still too high and that sort of thing. You wonder whether it's going to be survivable, and you know it's going to hurt awful bad. It's kind of a sick feeling to see a crash like that because it happens so slow. You know what the result is almost before it happens.
Blount landed in a grove of hardwood trees which broke his fall and probably saved his life. Alan was taken to a local hospital in Battle Creek, then transferred to Chicago with a fractured back and slight nerve damage. He's expected to make a complete recovery. Let's go to Ted Gordon.
Jeff, we're here with the Red Lobster balloon team and their pilot Bill Cunningham from Memphis, Tennessee. Bill's invited us to go along with him for Task 7, the Gordon Bennett Memorial Task. Cunningham didn't fare too well in Task 6. In fact, he scored only 82 points, and he's looking to get back among the leaders here in Task 7.
This is a crucial task for Bill. The leaders are packed tightly at the top. Any mistake at this point will cost the pilot dearly.
Cunningham's crew is laying out the balloon right now, and they're about to take off.
I'm sure Bill's anxious to get off the ground.
How would you rate this task in difficulty?
If I was going to rate this between 1 and 10, Ted, I'd call it a 7. It is moderately difficult.
You know, it's not unusual to see a lot of balloons launching from the same site. Right next door to Cunningham is Dr. Bill Bussey's Stroh's Beer Balloon. Bill's a dentist from Longview, Texas. It looks like Bill Cunningham's just about finished inflating his Red Lobster balloon. You know, this may look like a lot of fun, but it's really a lot of hard work. First, consider the number of hours the pilots and crews keep. They'll put in a good 20 hours every day during the week of competition, hardly what you'd call banker's hours. When they finally get to this inflating stage, that in itself is quite a bit of work. The balloon's envelope is filled by the inflator fan with cold air. During the inflation, the pilots and crew members will check the pulleys, the lines, the fabric, anything involved with the balloon's launch. When the pilot finally judges there to be enough air inside his balloon, the propane burners will then come into play. They'll heat the air inside the balloon to make it lighter than the outside, and the balloon will then rise. So the Red Lobster's up and off and headed for the target site, which today is a large plot of land back at the Kellogg's Regional Airport. And we're off too to join the Red Lobster balloon's recovery crew. We'll be following Cunningham and all the balloons back to the Kellogg's Airport. In the meantime, so will a lot of other people who have either pulled off the highway or other backstreet roads to take a look at all the balloons passing over the skies of Battle Creek. These fantastic sights have probably become almost old hat to the residents of this town. In fact, the 5th World Championships held here just a few years ago in 1981. Okay, so here's the view from the airport as the balloons are approaching the target. Remember, the balloonists don't want to hit the X, but just land to the side of it. All right, the first balloon we see here is Crispin Williams from Great Britain, a balloon that's really come out of the middle of the pack to make a strong run at the top of the field. He began this task in 7th place and has really been flying well. His last 2 drops have really been fine efforts. In fact, they've lifted him 8 points in the standings, and there's his next drop. Looks excellent. This is a French balloon, the Hotel Ibis. Its pilot Jean-Claude Dupin, who claims to be the first pilot ever to cross the Pyrenees Mountains.
There's an old friend of mine, David Schaefer from Chelsea, Michigan.
He's a former world champion himself.
He is, and he's flying a home-built balloon.
And why is this guy taking pictures? Well, if you saw a giant jack-o'-lantern in the sky, wouldn't you? Actually, that's Tom Sage of Great Britain, a real favorite with the kids. There's Håkan Wasson from Sweden. He's in a great position.
Oh, there goes his drop. It looks like a good one. That might be the best tonight.
Jeff, you're exactly right. That does win it for Håkan Wasson, moving him up into 7th place and gaining him 1,000 points for task 7. Let's rejoin the Red Lobster balloon's recovery team now, who are trying to track their pilot, Bill Cunningham. In fact, it looks like they're in radio contact.
Boy, I done good.
How good did you done do?
There are 5 in front of me right now. I did pretty close, right straight across from the X there, and it's there are some coming in back there with a chance, but they're coming in from so high it'll be a hard shot for them to do it. It can be done, but you know it takes a little luck and a little skill.
So Cunningham sounds pretty happy with his drop, and now's the time for the recovery crew to take center stage and locate its pilot. It's not as easy as it looks. The crew has to have a good understanding of the area they're traveling in and must be fast to its destination. The idea is to beat the balloon to the landing spot. Remember, most of the teams have never traveled these roads before.
I'm looking at a real good grassy spot. If you'll come down right past the airport, there's looks like a gravel pit thing. There's a building. There'll be a bunch of balloons standing up behind, right about 300 yards off the road back there on the right.
By keeping in radio contact, Cunningham's doing his best to give his crew any landmarks which might help them find him. They must be excellent navigators, depending solely on the maps they carry to get to whatever type of landing site the pilot chooses. But this week, you never know what you might find yourself landing in. We've had pilots touch down in cornfields, hog farms, and even the local nudist colony. Well, this looks like perfect timing by the Red Lobsters team as they race to their balloon, which is just a few feet above the ground. They grab it and have to jump right on top of the basket with a little bit of elbow grease involved there to keep the balloon down. Really a fine exhibition of some teamwork by Bill Cunningham and his Red Lobster Balloons recovery team.
How was that?
Yeah!
So far.
Good flight, Bill. And so a look at the Kellogg scoreboard through 7 tasks shows David Levin from the United States still holding on to the top spot, followed now by Englishman Crispin Williams. Michael Klingberg from Norway still in the race in 3rd, and right behind Klingberg is American David Schaefer and Oliver Roux Devilliers from France. This year, our friends from Canada have sent a strong team of 10 pilots to Battle Creek, and they're led by current national champion Håkan Kolting and his Pinocchio-faced Pampera Posa. Canada, of course, is a leader in quality beer and ale production around the world. And one of the balloons here is the number 67 Molson Beer balloon, piloted by Dale Ritchie of Calgary, Alberta. Dale is a former zoologist who gave up his practice to begin his competitive flying 7 years ago. Dale claimed the top Canadian spot in both the 1983 and 84 North American Championships, and now works as the chief pilot for Cameron Balloons of Canada. The Canadians are definitely a team to watch.
Welcome back to MCV Sports coverage of World Championship ballooning. We're ready to join the leaders David Levin and Crispin Williams for tasks 8 and 9. Today's tasks will be combined into one flight, and it's one of the more difficult events of the competition. First, the pilot selects his own launch site, flies to a predetermined goal, dropping his marker. Then he begins a hare and hound type of chase, dropping a second marker where the hare balloon lands. Ted Gordon's with the leaders now, so let's join him.
Certainly all eyes are on you right now. What's the feeling of being up on top?
It's great. If it'll last another 30 hours, it'll be perfect.
The feeling of being number one, is this all the competition? Is it all involved with winning this thing, or is the thrill of it all enough for a balloon?
It's the thrill of competition. I know that sounds a little trite, but it's, even if I don't win, I've had an outstanding week. I've never raced better. Competition's been wonderful, so even if I don't win, I'm gonna have a great week.
How about Battle Creek as far as hosting the thing?
It's been great. You know, the people have been great, hotel's well located, and the countryside is just very good for racing.
Describe what is going to happen today.
Well, hopefully I'm going to drop my marker in the middle of two X's.
This must be the right place because Levin and Crispin Williams have both chosen the very same yard for their launches. Crispin's from Barkingtie, England, a population of only 13. Who will be ascending first here?
I don't know. I'm going to hold on. Our launch period closes at 1:30, so I want to take off about 1 minute before that. I hope they'll go first.
See, how light am I?
There we go. There's the right camera.
There's another one coming. I'll clear him. Let's go. Let go. Thank you.
29.
Thanks.
Good luck.
So what they call the Watership Down task is underway, and our leaders are safely off. Each of these final tasks is so critical now because there isn't much breathing room up near the top. Levin leads Williams by 171 points, and Williams just happens to lead third place Michael Klingberg by that same margin. It gives you an idea of just how close this race is. Let's leave the leaders now and join Dana.
Thanks, Ted. What you see now is the Champagne Moet et Chandon Montgolfier Bull Imperial, or the Moet Chandon Balloon Team of France. This might be a good time to mention a bit of the history of this sport. Hot air ballooning began in France over 200 years ago. In 1783, two Frenchmen noticed that a woman's chemise, hung over a fireplace to dry, was lifted by hot air blowing out of the chimney. This led to some experimenting, and within a few months, the first hot air balloon took flight. 200 years later, the balloons returned to French soil for the 1983 World Championship held in Paris. This year, the French have sent 3 of their most experienced pilots to Battle Creek, and so far they've flown very well. 2 of the French are among the top 6 finishers after 7 tasks. And so, to our French friends, bon chance.
Thanks, Dana. The French have really been flying well here this week. As we saw earlier, both David Levin and Crispin Williams took off from the same launch area. Then they flew practically side by side throughout the task and now have landed in the same field as well. I asked Williams upon landing if this morning's conditions were conducive to good flying.
Yes, it was, and just to make it more difficult, there's lots of variation in wind direction, and it was changing as we went on. So one time you'd come down and go left, and you had to be very careful, because the next time you came down, you might well go right. So there was a lot of bobbling up and down to go the right way.
How did your drops go?
Both were quite good. I think I'm sure I was inside David on one and outside on the other, so it's about 1-1 on this one.
I think we split the race as far as Crispin and myself. So I think we're both real close. I think I'm in first, and hopefully we're pulling away from the pack a little. But he said, I don't remember his name, the Frenchman did well also. So
You just really couldn't be in a better position right now.
I hope it rains. Come on, rain! Wind, rain, hail, I'll take whatever I can get. Now this is great. After the first target and going to the second target, I was just thinking, this is the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. This is great.
So both Levin and Williams think they've made good drops, and that should keep them running 1 and 2 in the standings.
Part of the festivities at the World Hot Air Balloon Championship includes a contest between 3 helium-filled balloons. The balloonists say this gas balloon race is the first to be launched in Michigan since 1928, when it was done by automaker Henry Ford and tire maker Charles Goodyear. Gas ballooning requires tedious preparation, in which several $1,000s worth of helium is pumped into the balloons covered with special netting. This netting holds them on the ground until inflation is complete.
A hot air balloon can fly, or normally flies, for an hour to an hour and a half. It lands basically in the same area it took off from, 10 or 15 miles down the road. A helium balloon lifts up here and lands perhaps 2 or 3 or 4 states away, 3 or 4 or 5 or 1,000, 3 or 4 or 500 or 1,000 miles away. It's totally silent. Unlike the hot air balloons, which create a tremendous roar when the burners are ignited, there's no sound whatsoever with a helium balloon. We generally fly at much higher altitudes. We'll fly as high as 15,000, 16,000 feet on oxygen. It's a much greater adventure.
I think that gas ballooning is becoming more and more popular every year. More people are getting involved in it. And I think that there's some talk of a few manufacturers coming up with new balloons that are going to reduce the cost a little bit. So I think more people will become involved. And I hope they do. I hope that the sport grows because it's a new challenge, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it as we do.
The balloonists will leave Battle Creek at dusk, hoping to arrive over Louisville, Kentucky in 24 hours.
On this flight, we're going to stay probably below 10,000 feet, only because we don't have mountains to go over or anything like that.
Flying at night is tremendous. You have the feeling of being in a UFO. You know, you're gliding across the sky. We have a strobe that hangs in the bottom. You can see the lights clearly. You're in a basket that's just a little more than waist high. You have the air with no wind. You know, you're a cloud. It's amazing. It's spectacular.
Roll call. Bizarre, Bristow Stagg, Lynn, Smith.
The pilots have begun each day with an early morning briefing, waking to the call of Championship Director Thomas Shepard. This is Tom's second World Championship, and as Balloon Meister, you could say he's a pretty busy guy. He must select operation team members from around the world, supervise the host city's officials in preparing themselves for the event itself, and select the different tasks to be flown each day. The weather today looks to be somewhat erratic, with a lot of gusty low-level winds. So Shepard has chosen another CNT for Task 11 on this final day of competition. But a discrepancy in scoring has everyone wondering who actually leads this championship. In Task 8, leader David Levin was penalized 500 points because a string hanging from his balloon that he uses for sighting touched the ground. That penalty would drop Levin just behind Crispin Williams into second place, and Levin obviously isn't pleased.
My feeling is that what I did shouldn't really come under such an extreme penalty, such an extreme point penalty, and so I'm protesting it, and it'll go before the international jury.
So, a touch of controversy surrounds the scoring as we enter the final task of this 7th World Championship. For Task 11, let's watch the takeoff of a former world champion, Dave Schaefer of the United States. Dave lives in Chelsea, Michigan, which is less than 2 hours away from here in Battle Creek. As I mentioned earlier, Schaefer is a former world champion. He won his world championship back in 1975 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He and Bruce Comstock also hold the world flight duration record that they set in 1980 with a flight that lasted 24 hours, 8 minutes, and 58 seconds. Dave's a mechanical engineer who built his green and yellow Uncle Wiggily balloon. Jeff, why don't you explain what this final task will require today of our pilots?
Ted, it's a little windy today. The officials would like to get the pilots out, get them up, fly, and get them down before conditions deteriorate. It's just a little bit windy.
The weather's really that threatening?
Yes, I suppose that the officials are concerned that it will get windier, and we're really right at our marginal limit for wind speed on the surface.
Of course, we'd like to see some good competition, but we always have to think of safety first.
That's exactly right, Ted. One of the main concerns for the officials is running a task that has no incidents or accidents involved. And when the wind gets strong, it's very difficult to make landings. So we have an upper limit for wind speed, and they don't want to see that exceeded.
All right, so off goes David Schaefer for Task 11. You know, we've seen a lot more than just competition here in Battle Creek this week, so why don't we go back now and take a look at some of the other events that took place. comparing this championship with others in the past, how would you say the flying went?
Ted, world competition is always a great thing to go to and watch. This competition, the flying was difficult. The conditions weren't that great for steering, but the pilots did well. They rose to the occasion. It was fun to watch that. We had spectacular days where we could watch balloons. That was fun. I guess I always enjoy a world competition.
We're downtown in Battle Creek at the Kellogg Center where the presentation of the Kinsinger Trophy is about to take place. But before we get to the winners, a special thanks should be given to all the people who've had a hand in putting together this huge event. Well, the Kellogg's people think so too, and they're presenting their own Tony Award to the person who's best displayed outstanding achievement to the sport of hot air ballooning. On the podium now is Kellogg's Chief Executive Officer, William Lamothe.
And I think all of the pilots and the crews and the officials will be pleased with Tony's choice. It goes to Mr. Thomas F. Shepard, Champion Director for World Hot Air Balloon Championships, Battle Creek, Michigan, July 13, 21, 1985. Mr. Shepard.
It's always nice to see a lot of hard work rewarded. The Tony Award goes to Balloon Meister Thomas Shepard. And now let's go over to the competition. Third place goes to American Bill Cunningham from Memphis, Tennessee. The second place finisher is Crispin Williams of Barking-Tie, England.
I'd just like to say a few words. Firstly, to second all the thanks that have been given to the people of Battle Creek, who've been wonderful, to the organisers of the event, who have produced something far better than I think most balloonists have been to before. It's really been quite a happening. I'd thirdly like to thank, in particular, my crew, who've come a long way and who never get to fly in championships, and they've been absolutely wonderful this week. The fourth group of people that I'd like to thank are all the balloon crews who come so far with us, both to championships which they enjoy, but perhaps more importantly, to all the flying that we do in the unheralded fields over the world, which are much less exciting, much less glorious than a place like this, and who allow us few pilots to indulge ourselves to the degree that we do. Thank you all.
And the winner of the Kinsinger Trophy and new World Hot Air Balloon Champion is David Levin from Boulder, Colorado. Levin's protest of an earlier penalty proved decisive when an international jury ruled that his infraction should have been regarded as minor instead of the initial major assessment. His 500-point penalty was reduced to 200 points, easily giving David enough points for the world title.
I can't begin to describe what a fantastic experience it's been all week long. I want to thank all the people from Battle Creek that were so hospitable to us, all the people who arranged it, Tom Shepard and his crew. It was great. But I particularly want to thank the balloonists from all over the world that provided a level of sportsmanship that, you know, I consider it an honor to be a part of. Particularly the team from the United Kingdom and Crispin Williams, who showed me just super sportsmanship, and it was a real pleasure to compete with them all. Thank you very much.
Let's take a final look at the top 10 finishers. Long, we've been keeping an eye on the balloons in a competitive situation. But tonight, we'll be watching something completely different, yet every bit as exciting.
Over 20 balloons will join together with a fireworks display that should make for quite a spectacle. Let's take a look. This sports special has been brought to you by Kellogg's.
for joining us at the 7th World Hot Air Balloon Championship. It's been an absolutely beautiful event.
For Jeff Van Alstyne and Dana Nicola, I'm Ted Gordon. Goodbye, everyone. World Championship Ballooning has been a presentation of MCV Sports.